Hey everyone! This video is about my own personal experiences with mediumship. I've been getting a couple questions from friends about how it feels to connect with spirit, and so I thought it might be worthy to talk about my experiences, but want to note that every medium has their own journey. When I first started to process what was happening, hearing the voice of a divine, which I just call spirit, I got into learning from other mediums and their journeys, and I really liked Lauren Lynn Jackson's experiences and Tyler Henry's experiences because they talk openly about their struggles having this connection. And I think it's especially difficult if you grow up in a culture where this type of strong communication with the divine is not normal, especially if it's labeled as psychotic or mentally not well, or the experience is dismissed. So I think it's a very normal thing for people who have the gift of mediumship to feel conflicted about it for a long time. I can say that somebody recently asked me, when you communicate with spirit, does it happen in like really fast time? And the answer is, for me, no. It's just like a normal conversation. And another person asked me, how do you actually communicate? Like, do you get yourself into a trance? Do you do something to initiate the connection? And perhaps there are ways that I could learn how to improve the flow of conversation back and forth between spirit and I. But the way it works for me today, and has worked now for 2 years, is that I think of it, the best way I know how to explain this is through brainwave states. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about like the alpha and beta are the productive states. If I have this correct, the theta is the lucid state, and then delta and gamma are sleep and deep sleep. So if I think about these 5 brainwave states, sometimes, not often, I can get a message when I'm in alpha and beta. But most of my communication, especially outside of those 5 months where I was really sick and very connected, in that case, during those 5 months, the communication came just in alpha and beta all the time. I didn't need to initiate anything. It was overwhelming. It was a lot. The theta state is the state that people go into when you're hypnotized, or if you know how to do self-hypnosis or deep relaxation, you can get yourself to theta yourself. I am guessing, and I don't know this for sure, that theta is also the state that we are in when we are under the influence of psychedelics. Theta is also the state that we go into if we are meditators. If you know how to bring your body really to a calm place, and the mind is calm, beyond watching thoughts, for me, it just gets really quiet, almost like to a yin state, like a very gentle, almost not there, almost asleep. That's like probably on the cusp of theta and delta. But in meditation, I will get to a theta state. So every day we sleep, and I like to take naps. And so when we're falling asleep, we're going from alpha, beta, through theta into a delta, a sleep state. So we hit that theta state anytime we're falling asleep, and I do that when I'm taking a nap, which is maybe a few times a week. And then every night, of course, we go from beta to theta to delta. And one time I asked Spirit, I was actually in ceremony, and I said to Spirit, why do I hear people talking? like daily, and have for 2 years. And the reason I worded the question to Spirit that way is because that's the only way I knew how to orientate to my experience. And what I mean by that was, from the beginning, starting in, I think, June of 2022, when I'm falling asleep to take a nap, or at night, or in a deep meditation, I will hear snippets of people's conversations. And the snippet is sometimes a complete sentence. It's rarely more than a sentence. And sometimes it's just a few words. And often I get visions that come with the words, but not always. And the snippets are often just the most mundane things. Like, what do you want for dinner? It's really mundane things. And so I assumed I was hearing people speak to each other. But now that I think about it, I really didn't understand that I was actually hearing people's thoughts. Or at least this is what I believe right now, that I'm hearing people's thoughts. I'm not actually hearing their conversations. And when I asked Spirit, why do I hear people talking? Or why do I hear people talking to each other? Spirit said, Spirit had spelled the word mediumship earlier in that conversation. And Spirit said, because you're very sensitive now. And Spirit showed me an image, a vision in my mind of a antenna, or maybe not an antenna. It's like a radio dish, And Spirit showed me this radio dish and said, do you see that you're so sensitive now that other people's thoughts just kind of fall into that radio dish, like from the collective, the universal collective consciousness. And I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. And Spirit said, does it bother you? And I said, no, because much of my life I've struggled with loneliness. And since I retired and have been an empty nester, I spend a lot of time alone when everybody else is at work. And I'm in my 40s, so I get a lot of time alone. And so I said to Spirit, no, it actually doesn't bother me. It makes me feel comforted because I always know people are around. And Spirit said, are you sure? And I thought that question was interesting. I didn't understand why Spirit asked me that at the time. But now I understand, because the novelty of the experience wears off. And at least for me it has. And it can be very disruptive because, almost, well, I would say every week for sure. And sometimes, like for example, this week I have heard people's thoughts as I'm falling asleep at night, every night for the last 5 nights. And what happens is I will start to hit that low theta, high delta brainwave state, really, sorry for the alarms, really relaxed and peaceful. You all know this very lucid state where the conscious mind is kind of surrendering to the unconscious mind. And it's so relaxing and it's so peaceful to just fall right into that delta brainwave state and go to sleep. But at that point, I will be hearing other people's thoughts, and the conscious mind will grab that thought and start to try to make meaning of it. And so I'll wake up, and I've tried different things. I'm learning to just say, okay, enough. And I picture like I'm turning off the knob, and sometimes that works. Sometimes I have to get very clear with my boundaries and say, like, I am very serious. I can't take any more. I need silence. And sometimes when I'm really firm, it will just stop. And other times I feel like I turn off that knob, but there's like a tube or a pipeline of people's thoughts coming from one end to me on the other end, and I will catch whatever is still in that tube. and I will have to receive those because they've already been sent. But turning it off at the knob in my mind will kind of shut it off at the beginning of that too. So I'm playing with this, my own boundaries around. It's essentially telepathy. Another thing that people laugh about when I share is that I had been experiencing this telepathy for 14 months. And then I traveled to Peru in September of 2023. And I went there to go sit with ayahuasca for the second time. And I spent a week before the retreat just being a tourist in Cusco. And I noticed the first night I got there that as I was falling asleep, I started to hear people's thoughts, but it was in Spanish. And I was like, I will be darned. I don't speak much Spanish, but I know enough to recognize the language. I'm like, I'll be darned. The thoughts I'm hearing from people around me is in Spanish, so it's definitely localized. I have no idea how far that radius goes. I don't know if it's half a mile or 15 miles. I have no idea. And I have no idea how people why some people seem to be able to have their thoughts fall into my dish, my awareness, and other people don't. I can tell sometimes if there's a gender to the name or to the words. Sometimes it feels energetically like a female, and sometimes it feels energetically like a male. Sometimes it has no gender. Often there's no gender. And when I went to travel to Jordan in the Middle East a few months ago, spring of 2024, the words were in Arabic, which just was a whole bunch of like candy for my brain, because it's a different language, and my brain wants to like understand it and dissect it. There's a very romantic view about mediumship, and I really feel privileged to have mediumship. I think it's not about catching people's thoughts in this radio dish. It's about the connection to the divine, and the telepathy. The main purpose of it for me is to communicate with spirit, but it's a byproduct that I hear other people's thoughts around me, and not always helpful. And I wanted to add one more thing. Some people start experiencing mediumship at a very young age, and for me it hit in my mid-40s when I first sat with ayahuasca. That apparently is what opened me up. In fact, the week-long retreat I was in, when I sat with the medicine the first time, there was one particular night, our third night of drinking the medicine. It just happened to be my 46th birthday that night. I got fried. I don't know how to explain it. The power of the medicine in me was so amplified that I could not stay in the Maloka. I got out of the Maloka and I sat on this breezeway underneath the night sky and the stars, just trying to breathe, because it felt like a hatch had been opened from heaven. And I was getting so much information for hours and hours, and I couldn't stop it. And I tried visualization exercises. I was like, oh, I must be able to turn this off. So I pictured like a hatch closing, and that didn't work. And it just kept coming and kept coming, like flooding all this information. It was really overwhelming. It was really tiring and taxing on my body. It was a lot to hold, a lot of energy to hold in my body. And I was up until I think 6:30 in the morning. Ceremony finished at like 3 a.m. And the only way I could stop it and close that hatch, so to speak, was after taking a shower back in my room and tossing and turning for hours and trying to journal and trying to meditate and do all these things to stop this flood of information and energy coming into my body. I remembered that the maestro who facilitated ceremony earlier that evening had said that sometimes if you eat food, actually what he said is you can you can prolong the medicine if you fast. So I reversed that formula and thought, well, maybe I can stop the power of the medicine if I eat. So I ate a banana in bed. I was so exhausted. I mean, I had like no juice left in the tank. I was like on 1%. And I take this bite of a banana and I was so tired. I didn't even finish eating the banana. The sugar from the banana just like must have hit my bloodstream, and it was enough to kind of stop that and close that hatch from heaven, so to speak, from the divine, universal, maybe the divine or the collective field. I think of consciousness and spirit more as a unified field that's everywhere and pervades everything. So anyway, it's not always romantic to have these gifts, and it is a challenge to learn how to manage our own energy and kind of turn things off and set boundaries for ourselves, because we have to live our lives, right? And mediumship is just one of the many gifts that I have received since that week sitting with ayahuasca, and I'm happy to do a video if you all are curious about some of the other experiences. But I have a feeling that those who are watching this also have many gifts, many psychic gifts, and I know that we all have gifts. I just know that some are more sensitive than others and are encouraged to work to fine-tune their gifts or have the space or the permission to fine-tune their gifts. So that covers the general telepathy. But as far as the relationship with spirit and how that looks for me is when I'm falling asleep at night, or when I'm meditating, or when I'm falling asleep to take a nap, I will often hear a sentence, a complete sentence, and the message is personal, and so it's different. It always feels different than kind of the general snippets of thought that I hear from other people's minds. And the messages are like, they're always relevant, and they're always helpful, and they feel like breadcrumbs. They feel like breadcrumbs, like when I'm trying to understand how to solve a personal problem, or how to understand consciousness or non-duality or meditation techniques. The sentence will bring some clarity. So, for example, one of the messages I got in early April of this year, 2024, was, "You will awaken more on your next path." This is why I feel really blessed to be able to have this connection with spirit. I have diaries full of messages from spirit, leaving like just a sentence. And then in addition to like a specific clear sentence, I have these teaching dreams. And the teaching dreams always have the presence of spirit, like another person there showing me something. And they're done through the most beautiful and creative design. The way the messages are constructed are way beyond my imagination. I think of myself as creative in a sense, but it's these illustrations use things from my own life experiences and from things that only I know, or ways that I identify, and will show me through illustration something. So, for example, my brother, who I adore, he's 14 months older than I am, he identifies as an atheist. And he and my sister and I have had our own share of pain from our own childhood trauma. And my brother copes with that trauma in a very different way than I do. And so even though for a decade and a half or 2 decades I identified as an atheist, ever since I sat with ayahuasca, I would say I identify as spiritual. And about a year ago or so, I was really struggling with my connection with my brother. I love him so much, and we're just very different in some ways that are challenging for us. But we're so connected, and when my brother is hurting, I feel his pain so much. Even if we're not talking, even if we haven't talked in weeks, I feel his pain so much. And the teaching dream I had around a period where I was really feeling my brother's pain a lot was Spirit showing me my brother coming out of heaven, out of the sky. Sorry, I'm using words that make sense for me, so if they don't make sense for you, I apologize. But coming out of the sky, and he had this cord connected to his back. He was like being birthed out of the cosmos. And Spirit said, do you see that, I'm trying to remember the exact language, do you see that even though you're fortunate to have a very strong connection with the divine, not everyone does. And all of a sudden in this vision, I see these giant, humongous scissors, and they cut the cord that's attached to my brother's back that goes up to the cosmos, to the heavens. And my brother in the vision is like in pain. And Spirit said, can you imagine living life without a sense of knowing something that the universe is unconditionally loving? And can you imagine living life that way? And think about how lonely it would be. And when I awoke from that, I remember thinking, like, do I really have a strong connection with the divine? I do, but at the time I was going through my own tests from what I think of as shamanic illness. So I wasn't in a place where I could really appreciate the bigger picture of this connection I have with the divine. And I sat there and I laid in bed thinking about, even though my own kind of journey into spirituality has been a really rough journey, I know that there is perfect design in everything. I know beauty in such a deep way, and I know for sure what it feels like to be unconditionally loved. And that unconditional love for me from Spirit has taught me how to love myself unconditionally, and how to extend that unconditional love. It's not easy. It takes ongoing practice, but that unconditional love to others. And that is really profound. I think if there's one thing that my relationship with Spirit has taught me, is that I'm not alone, and what it feels like to be unconditionally loved. So that's an example of a teaching dream. And again, I've written all of these down for the past 2 years and recorded them. And I have probably had, on average, I seem to go through cycles. I'm getting ready to go sit with ayahuasca, and so when we sit with the medicine, we often become more sensitive. So I'm having a lot of dreams this past week. But there are some weeks where I have no teaching dreams, and some weeks, where I will have, 2 or 3. But almost every day when I fall asleep, I hear the thoughts of those around me. And definitely weekly, either in meditation or while falling asleep for a nap or at night, I will get a sentence or a snippet of a breadcrumb that gives me clarity on what I can expect in the future and how to navigate a challenge I'm having. So I hope that answers the question from the person who was wondering, and maybe give some clarity on what my personal experience with mediumship feels like, and in terms of regularity and how I actually experience the connection with spirit in that way. And I would love to hear from others who have the experience of mediumship, especially if it's over a long period of time. I think a lot of us have psychic gifts that come and go and are intermittent, but I think of those psychic gifts as extending into the realm of mediumship when it's consistent for a long period of time. And I don't have any personal friends who are mediums, not that I identify that way, but I don't have any friends who have experiences of long-term mediumship. So if you are one of those people, please reach out and share your experiences. I'd love to hear them. And with that, I hope you have a blessed day. Thanks everybody for listening to my channel. And if this resonates with you and you think it may resonate with someone else who may be looking for clarity around mediumship and their own experiences, please do pass this video on to them. And I hope it helps someone out there. So much love. Mwah.